Welcome back to the Mina Kimes Show, featuring Lenny, the only NFL podcast where one of the hosts is rooting for Gonzaga, Drake, Yale, Mississippi State, UConn, Georgia, Bryant, and Wofford. Ben Solak, I believe those are all the teams with dog mascots in the tournament.
Mostly bulldogs, right? And then there's one like Wofford is a terrier, right? But it's mostly a bulldog when we go for the dog mascots.
A lot of bulldogs, yeah. I wonder why that is. Why bulldogs, huskies, and bulldogs tend to dominate.
I feel like because they're the best behaving live mascots, right? They just sit on a chair and they look regal and glorious.
That's a good point. They're also maybe not legal anymore in the U.S. I don't know. I don't want to offend any bulldog terriers and pit people are the two types of dog owners. You just don't want to get into it with them on the internet. That voice is Ben Solak. I said his name. Before we get to today, we're going to talk about what I am characterizing as some of the biggest questions after free agency. It's not really over, but it's kind of over, and we have a lot of questions. But more importantly, Ben, welcome back to the show. It's been a while. You haven't been on since the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking about last time I was on, it was right. We were reacting to that. And then today I hop on and Brandon Graham is retiring. And I didn't cry this time like I cried when Jason Kelce retired. But man, Graham, the sack against Tom Brady, what he's been for the Eagles, it's fun having an offseason watching a guy like that retire on top. That was a nice way to send him off.
I'm not tearing up. My eyes are literally just watering because it's so bright in here. The highest compliment I can pay Brandon Graham is that my mother-in-law just calls him BG.
BG.
She'll just text me like, "Wow, did you see that from BG?" And I'm like, "Who are you talking about?"
BG.
Talks about him like she's an Eagles fan, obviously. None of my questions are about the Eagles, unsurprisingly.
No, Azeez Ojulari, another Georgia Bulldog in the building, another giant free agent. Come on.
He's going to get the most infuriating 9 sacks in the NFL next year. No, we should start with the Bengals. So I have 8 questions, the final one of which is about Aaron Rodgers, just in the off possibility that Aaron Rodgers signs somewhere, makes a decision between now and the end of this recording.
Sure.
I have no idea. No information there, but we'll get to that. The Bengals is the big news of the week. The way I have worded this for you is, can the Bengals field a viable defense?
Yeah.
But before we get to that, I do want to get your thoughts on them signing both Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins in one fell swoop, breaking their typical contract structure to do so, notably throwing a decent amount of cash their way as their quarterback, Joe Burrow, requested. Ja'Marr Chase comes in at about $40 per year. He becomes the new highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL after Myles Garrett. Great job waiting for that one to get done. And then the T. Higgins actually comes in under 30, which was a little bit of a discount, especially relative to DK Metcalf coming in at 30 APY. So big overarching thoughts. How do you feel about that? Then we will get to the defense.
Yeah. The T thing, man. Like I understand he wanted to stay in Cincinnati. You know, it's same as Ja'Marr and playing with Burrow. I totally get it. With the way the Patriots were throwing around money this year and the way that the wide receiver market fell down, what would T. Higgins have gotten from the Patriots? I think it would have been above 35. I think it would have been the second highest paid receiver. Like the Patriots gave Milton Williams $26 million, right? Like they had money on money on money. They still have money. I feel like T left like $6 million on the table per year, which is crazy to say. I understand it's absurd, but still, it's a nice hometown discount for the Bengals. Yeah, I think the sticker shock is anticipatable. Like I think everybody reasonably has the sticker shock. I totally get why. It just is so hard to calibrate to how fast the cap has accelerated over the last 3 or 4 years, right? Because we had that COVID dip, it feels like the cap is shooting up. Revenue super high. The cap is expected to be over $300 million next year. There's really just there's no reason to not put an extra $1 million on top, right? There's no more like, oh, only increase it by X amount. Like Chase became the highest paid non-quarterback in football by like $500,000. That is peanuts on a $280 million cap. And so I get the sticker shock, but I think it's a reasonable investment. If you're going to build a team and you start talking about where do we allocate our cap dollars, you start with the quarterback position and then very close to the next position out of your mouth is wide receiver. That's what the Bengals are doing. And if they get Trey Hendrickson done, yeah, edge rusher would have been another one of those positions that you would say right at the top. And so to me, it's good team building. And kudos to them because like you said, breaking the contract structure, they've worked hard to generate the cash necessary, and they've got a ring of honor now, and they've got, you know, a new approach on making sure they keep their star players. It's been years in the making. So honestly, kudos to Cincinnati.
first of all, as far as the money goes about T taking, it is a discount. So let's
Yeah.
get it absolutely a discount. But he did it in part because they applied the second franchise tag to him, which like this is really a case study for why the franchise tag is so anti-player and
Yeah.
BS because ultimately, again, it was his choice to not play out another year, risk injury. That all factors into this, and he clearly wanted to stay in Cincinnati. But you are talking about, let's say it's $6 million difference over, if you had gone with the Patriots, or whatever. That's like $20 million plus over the course of a contract. So it's not an instant. I know when we talk about these big numbers, we're like, whatever. It's like $2 million more per year, whatever. It actually ends up being quite a bit of money. I think you're right about them making the right decision paying him. I made a point on NFL Live yesterday, and I got a little bit of blowback. I think maybe I don't know if I articulated myself well, or it's just a difficult concept to people wrap. It sounds a little bit counterintuitive. I didn't want to run this idea by you, which is that having two, like a 1A, 1B, is actually more valuable in Cincinnati than it is in some other offenses. Look, it's incredibly valuable in every offense. Every team would love to have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. But it almost reminds me of having T. Higgins with Chase. It almost reminds me of Saquon with the Eagles, or having these receivers rather with Joe Burrow, which is, what if you took a thing that is really good and made it even better? And there's a bit of a force multiplier effect. Like, what if you have a quarterback in this case who, like, his preferred style of play is to sit in the gun in a spread out offense, hunt matchups, make aggressive throws to his receivers. In that environment, which is the context that Joe Burrow likes to play him, and it's not actually increasingly a small amount of NFL offenses are like this, you could argue that investing in the receiver position is actually more important than it is in other offenses, which sounds counterintuitive because we think of quarterbacks as elevators. Does that make sense to you?
Unequivocally, yes, I 100% agree. I think that this is an integral thing to understand. One, if you want to make a Super Bowl run, you better have a guy who can dominate and then a guy who can dominate. You got to have a dude and then a dude. And not at quarterback. You need to have multiple players who put stress on the opposing defense in terms of game plan. If you walk into a Super Bowl, 2 weeks of prep from an opposing defense that is clearly playoff caliber, and you only have one guy for them to worry about, they're going to solve the one guy. They have enough time and they have enough resources. You must have a second dude. Add in the additional layers of the Bengals being one of the pass heaviest teams over expectation in football with Joe Burrow. That you're not in a spot where, we're only throwing the ball 35 times a game. We have to get Jamar Chase 8 targets. How are we going to get T. Higgins his 8 targets? No, you're throwing the ball, dropping back 40, 45 times a game. There's going to be enough mouths to feed. There's going to be enough passes to get both of those guys the volume, to have the impact that their salary caps imply. So with how much the Bengals pass the ball, you need it. And then with specifically how Joe Burrow throws the football, which is, I'm going to get in the gun, I'm going to pump my leg. Your guys are going to start to move, safety moving this way, linebacker going that way. I know exactly where I want to go with the ball. You need those like 3 primary options to be trustworthy players. They also got Mike Gesicki, right? If he's going to be the pocket processor, then everybody has to be viable. You can't be in a spot where you're fielding Jermaine Burton for 40, 45, 50 snaps because he's unviable, and now the structure of the offense stops working. In general, it's good to have 2 highly paid receivers if you're going to be a pass-heavy team. In the specifics of the Bengals, it is even more important. And I know Chase's numbers without T on the field look fine. It's because Jamar Chase is insanely good. Like that, the point isn't that like T unlocks the level of Jamar Chase. The point is that the offense holistically makes sense when you have 2 dominant receivers on the outside. Watch the Broncos game back. Watch the Broncos game. That's the theory every single time.
So the case against it, which does have some credence, is that you're robbing Peter to pay Paul a little bit. So, the defense, it takes away money that you could hypothetically invest in your defense. And the defense was horrible last year. And you're running it back. And last year it didn't work out for a litany of reasons. So that actually brings me to the question that I posed at the beginning, which is, can the Bengals field? I don't want to talk about the defense through the lens of should they have paid T. Higgins. You and I clearly agree that they should have. They did. That's done. Let's focus on the here and now. Can this defense be 20th? So I'm looking at the depth chart right now. I'm just going to read it to you. There's still potentially free agents out there. Obviously, they're draft picks. So up front, it is really similar to what it was last year, basically. So they actually kept Joseph Asai opposite Trey Hendrickson. On the interior, they did keep BJ Hill. You have Chris Jenkins. Sneaky ad, TJ Slayton. I totally missed that. He balled out in the wild card game. And then I think he tried to start a fight or something. So that was bad. But
got to do it.
He was really good in that game. Okay, linebacker group: Jermaine Pratt, Logan Wilson, and then they added Oren Burks.
Mhm.
Last seen being competent for the Eagles, but that is okay. Corners, again, this is the same group: DJ Turner, Cam Taylor-Britt, Dax Hill at nickel, and then your safeties are Jordan Battle, Geno Stone. Again,
Mhm.
this is really what it was last year. New defensive coordinator, Al Golden. That's probably the biggest change.
Yeah.
I guess you have to start with the Hendrickson question before you get to the rest of it, right? Because they got to figure out what they're going to do about that.
Yeah, I think that without Hendrickson, I think it's really hard to see them being outside of the bottom 10, right? Simply because Hendrickson makes the splash plays for you on the passing downs, right? So you get off the field on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, having a guy like Hendrickson. I think that there are some run defense problems that come up on the early downs because Hendrickson was really prioritizing rushing the passer last season. So like you can get away with the run defense there, but it's still on the passing downs that it really matters. Secondary. Yeah, like I think I have liked DJ Turner's play when he has been healthy. I have liked Cam Taylor-Britt's play at times, and I think that you can argue that Lou Anarumo, I'm a big fan of as a defensive mind. I'm happy he landed in Indianapolis. I think he's a good DC. Lou Anarumo runs a pretty complex defense. A lot of moving parts in that secondary, a lot of adjustments on the fly, a lot of zone spacing and relating to guys and things that adjust. And I think that overwhelms some of the young players. And I think that if Golden comes in and makes things simpler, but Golden also, like, it's not like a just line up and run sort of defense.
Yeah.
But Golden can maybe simplify, can help the young players. He obviously was a college DC, and the Bengals know we're playing a lot of young guys right now. So maybe he get it to the 21-year-olds and 22-year-olds and 23-year-olds a little bit easier than Lou did, work with the young guys better. So yeah, I can see this step forward in the secondary. You probably still lack impactful players, right? Who do you like against wide receiver ones? Cam Taylor-Britt kind of isn't a great answer for that. Who do you like as the run stuffer? Right now, the answer, right? Sheldon Rankins, BJ Hill, TJ Slayton. Like, they aren't great answers. But again, like, if you're trying to clear the 20th bar, it's possible. The thing that you needed to do was hit on draft picks, and they have just missed tremendously on draft picks. They clearly saw the vision, right? They have spent, I think it's 10 day 1, day 2 defensive draft picks over the last 4 drafts, right? If you go starting in 24, Chris Jenkins on the defensive line, McKinley Jackson on the defensive line, 23, Myles Murphy on the defensive line, DJ Turner defensive back, Jordan Battle defensive back, Dax Hill, Cam Taylor-Britt, Zach Carter, Joseph Osai. Like, yeah, that's 10 for top first 3 round picks on defense last 4 years, and they just no one's hit, right? Like, just misses. That's the nature of the draft. Sometimes you miss on guys, and the plan, which is just reload the defense with young talent, be super cheap on defense so we can invest in T and Jamar and Burrow. You just miss because you miss on the players.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine this. You said bottom 10. I mean, I would say it's hard to imagine them escaping the bottom 5 without Trey Hendrickson. Mm-hmm. So I understand if you pay him, you're spending a tremendous amount of your cap on 4 players. Certainly, I don't know what contract Hendrickson would come in on, but you got to think it would be at the top of the NFL in terms of just the, and they can structure it in different ways. And
but they probably have to put a lot of money in year 1 because that's how they do it. And like, they're already at 48% of their 2025 cap is in Joe.
Yeah, I mean, that takes you to pretty clearly the top in the NFL. So anyways, but I just can't see them getting out of the basement without him. And then you do that. So I think we both are advocating for that. Especially because it doesn't, I was open to the idea of trading him if I thought you could get like a first, certainly, or even a high second. I don't think that's in the offing right now, as the longer this thing goes on. Other than that, you have to hit on like a couple draft picks. There's players on this defense who have flashed. Turner, Dax Hill, even Cam Taylor-Britt has had games and moments where he's made plays. It's just been so inconsistent. You hope that, like last year, Geno Stone, you can get better play, a little bit more like Baltimore. Young players, they're still young players. Chris Jenkins, Jordan Battle, they're young players. Maybe your coach who's used to working with young players can get more out of them. There's still some free agents, I think, that might make sense on single-digit million type contracts for them. Mm-hmm. I'll throw out one. I was looking at the remaining guys. Kaiser White, to me, is the linebacker. Mm-hmm. Greg Rosenthal and I always joke about him because he's so much higher on him than me. And it's been a kind of an inside joke between us for years. I'm telling you,
one of the nerdiest inside jokes I've ever heard of in my life is a Kaiser White relative ranking inside joke.
I'd be much more comfortable with him than the Oren Burks bet. Just throwing out some names. Asante Samuel. That might be, I mean, at this point, that can't be priced out though, right? Like, all of these guys at this point are probably single-digit million guys. Russell Douglas. Like, I know they're not great, but they're competent NFL players, Ben.
Yeah, no, like Rasul Douglas and Asante Samuel, like you can just play them on the outside and feel like, all right, if it's low end CB2 play, at least it's CB2 play. Because at times you're walking out there with like CB3, CB4 play from your guys on the outside. I very much agree. One thing I will say, I looked, I was like, okay, like how much did teams spend on defense last year? Like who got away with bargain bidding it? The Rams last year, which the Rams, again, like maybe not a model for team, like, the Aaron Donald thing, whatever. The Rams' total defensive cap last year, every single player, was $39.5 million. The next lowest was the Panthers at 66. So you can, if you can not just hit on young guys, but you can develop young guys, right? They left their 4th round safety, Cam Kitchens, out there and dealt with some growing pains, and he got better, right? UDFAs. Yeah. If you have a coaching staff that can work with young guys, you can just play all the young dudes. Get, obviously you got to hit on a Jared Verse and a Braden Fisk. Got to hit on those guys, but you can go play young guys and get away with it, right? Get to the playoffs, have a good pass rush. Oh, it's enough, to make a run, whatever. It is doable. You got to draft better than this.
Got to draft better, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's an open question as to whether the offense, all gas, no brakes, the defense, if they can just get to 20, this is a playoff team. I would put that the bar around there, and obviously they have to hit on those draft picks.
It's possible.
It is possible. Okay. My second question for you is a fun one because it's just completely hypothetical and it gets us into the draft, which we have not talked about, you and I. Mm-hmm. I just put it this way. What does Myles Garrett know? So this is based on a wonderful clip from friend of the show, friend of mine, Andrew Siciliano, who's a Browns fan and calls the Browns during the season. So he was interviewing Myles Garrett and he basically asked him, what do you know about the quarterback position? I can't remember how he put it, but he was like, clearly Myles Garrett agreed to come back for an enormous amount of money. Does he have some information? And Garrett straight up says to him, I'm paraphrasing, he's had conversations with the team about their plan at quarterback. He implied that he knows what that plan is, which really leads to a lot of fun hypothesizing. Ben, my interpretation of that is that they're most likely taking Shedeur Sanders because everybody agrees Cam Ward is QB1. Now, if nobody knows what the Tennessee Titans are going to do, and that would include either taking Ward, taking another player, or trading with another team.
Yeah.
If the Browns were to trade up for Ward, I don't think Garrett would sound as confident about the plan. So my belief is that he thinks the Browns think the Titans are taking Ward and they're taking Sanders. What was your interpretation of that?
The best thing about this clip is that the Browns official account tweeted it, right? This isn't like Siciliano tweeted it, some Browns. No, at Browns was like Myles Garrett being asked about the court. Who knows, right? Which is very like the engagement farm, the hype farm. So I love the fact that they're leaning into it. I agree with your read. I think that if it were, hey, we're trading for Kenny Pickett, there'd be a little less eyebrow wiggling from Myles Garrett.
Or agent Kirk Cousins would be another possibility.
I don't think I know Kirk's a guy who's been out of the league for a long time. Everybody likes Kirk. I don't think Myles Garrett would be like, ho, do I know something you don't know about Kirk Cousins?
I'm coming back. We've got a plan.
So yeah, to me, I agree with your read. I think the more the days go on, the more I think Titans stay and take forward. Yes, and then, Browns at 2. I think that they know that Shedeur is if he's going to get past 3, he's not going to get much further past 3 with the Giants. Like, if they want to get him, to go get him. I also think that, while I would not want to draft Shedeur Sanders for what he is as a prospect with the 2nd overall pick, and I think that that's very rich for a player of his caliber, I also think the Browns are not wrong to be like, man, we just are going to we're just going to swing at every single quarterback pitch we can. Just over the plate, not over the plate, low, high. We are just hacking away until we make contact with something. Because until we get a guy in the building who can play functional quarterback for us, we can't develop receivers, and we can't, Kevin Stefanski's can't do anything here. And with the cap and the Deshaun Watson $81 million dead cap in 2026 just sitting on top of us, we just have to swing on young guys until eventually we make contact with one. And so I can't fault them for saying, second best guy, it's going to cost us 2 overall to go get it. If he's bad, if he can't play for us, we're just going to be at 2 overall next year and we're going to swing again. They're kind of in that caliber of desperation. So it would not in any shape or form shock me if the Browns are we're just staying at 2 and taking Shedeur Sanders, and we will stay at 2 and take the quarterback who's there every single draft until we get a guy.
Yeah, I I have mixed feelings about all of this. Because whenever they ask, like, what should the Browns do? I'm like, well, I mean, this is what they should do is take Travis Hunter, who's,
Yeah.
right?
Or just like trade back continuously
Or trade
forever
back.
and get guys. Yeah.
Or can you imagine Abdul Carter rushing opposite Myles Garrett? I
Mhm.
mean, those two players would be unbelievably sick on this team, but that's not the situation they're in. That's not the situation they're in as a franchise. That's not the situation the coaching staff, the front office are in. There's immense pressure to go quarterback here. I get it. I'll get into Sanders more when we do. I'll dive into the quarterback prospects more. I've had a lot of time with this film at this point. He makes sense for me in the Browns offense. So I know that sounds like damning with faint praise a little bit, but part of the reason why I believe this is what's happening is not only my interpretation of, which I kind of outlined him saying this at all, as well as, again, put a pin in this, the Titans aggressively improving their offensive line in free agency.
Yep.
Not going to get into Ward and everything in that offense in this episode. That also convinced me. And the fact they didn't add a quarterback. Like, the Titans dramatically spent on their offensive line. They didn't add a quarterback. They're probably taking a freaking quarterback.
Yeah.
And that's right. Okay. Boom. I can imagine Kevin Stefanski with his offense, which he did not really get to run the last few years, looking at Shedeur Sanders, and thinking, yeah, I can work with that. Under center, play action. He can boot. He can throw on the move.
The 21 Baker menu. It's the exact
accurate.
Yeah.
He is, to me, actually a pretty good fit for the kind of offense that Stefanski wants to run.
No, I agree with that for sure. If like I said, Sanders for me, 2 overall, far too rich for my blood. If you told me, hey, Sanders is your quarterback, what are you doing? Yeah, we're doing a movement series for sure, right? We are making him throw. We're inviting him to throw on the run. We are getting him outside of the pocket by design. We're letting, because he's willing to tuck and run, and he kind of can keep the sticks moving. He's not that good of an athlete, like actually in terms of breaking tackles and stuff. But again, like, he's decisive runner. He knows when to scramble, what have you. He's wonderfully accurate on the move. And so I like the Stefanski offense for him. Judy, I feel like, is a good receiver for him, right? Just trust the guy separation, throw it to him, right? Let him do the TikTok routes and just kind of throw it, whenever it is that he separates. Like, that works great for Sanders. I see the fit. I think that, like, if there were any other team, I'd be like, what's the ceiling? Championship outlook. Like, how far can Sanders take you? But again, if you're the Browns, you're just looking for somebody to get you up out of the muck. You're just looking for somebody to get you up out of the hole and return you to some level of cap relevance, some level of team relevance. Sanders can probably give that to you, which is why it doesn't bother me as much. Sanders, the media zoo for Sanders in Cleveland, though, is also like, that's going to be a lot with that quarterback room and with the expectations around that team. Sanders in the building would be appointment television.
How would you feel about them also bringing Kirk Cousins for nothing for nothing? Because that's essentially what it would be.
So it's a camp battle of Shedeur, Kenny Pickett, Kirk Cousins, and Deshaun if he's actually back from the Achilles. I don't love any of it, to be honest. I think it's going to make the beat work very hard. Okay, today was the good Kirk Cousins day. Today was the good Kenny Pickett day, and so on and so forth. I think that you can bring in Kirk. Sure. Maybe you do it because you want to give Sanders a full year off, and you're doing it from a Stefanski Barry perspective to, like, keep him on the back burner, maybe keep your job for another year, whatever. But if you draft Shedeur Sanders at 2, you don't play him, every single game is just going to be the fan base screaming at ownership and at the team to play Shedeur Sanders. The only thing you're going to want to see. So it's going to burn a hole in your pocket pretty quick. I for nothing, that I don't hate it, because you can't hate it for nothing, but also it doesn't really, like, achieve anything.
Yeah, I don't know why Kirk would want to do that either. I don't know. I guess he would want an opportunity to start somewhere, but much more to be discussed in the coming days. I just skipped over Ward 1-1, but that's obviously something that is interesting to me. And yeah, I it's funny. I started off thinking the Titans were absolutely going to trade down, and as time went on, I think everybody's kind of moved off of that and started to believe they're just going to take. And at first, I was like, "Well, this is smoke," because they want everyone to think they're going to take Cam Ward so they can trade down. And increasingly, it's like, nah, they're going to take Cam Ward.
But that, if they are trying to trade down, which was the first thing, and I'm always inclined to kind of believe the first thing, they're doing a very, very, very good job. They really are. And the quarterback class is shaping up.
Don't take a quarterback in free agency. Just keep your room empty so that.
But like, let's say they move back and then they become the Jackson Dart at 14 overall team, right? Made up name, made up number. Would I love it? No, it's not really a big Jackson Dart fan. Okay, Dart will Levis quarterback competition. You can't really move me on that. But still, the potential to gain a lot of picks in a class that does not have a great elite talent because you traded out of one would be good business. And so if they are trying to move off the pick, they're doing a bang up job.
What if you trade down to 1-3 with the Giants? You get to take Carter or Hunter, and let's say you throw in a first.
Yeah. And then you walk into next year.
How do you walk away from that?
Right.
Yeah.
Walk into next year, much better quarterback class projected next year. You never really know these things, but much better projected. And you've got 2 firsts. And you can move around. Yeah. And that's the thing is, and you give Levis a shot, and you give, whatever your Tyler Shuck a shot, or your Jalen Milroe a shot. Absolutely. I think it would be good, patient team building. I would like that move.
Does Brian Callahan willing to do that, though? I don't think
so. Much better question.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Question 3. Who the heck are Justin Herbert and Drake Maye throwing to?
You and me, baby. Strap up. Pads on. Here we go. I'm running slants.
So we came into this free agency thinking the Patriots and the Chargers were 2 teams that really need to invest in their offense. This was not a great group of receivers. However, there was a pretty good receiver, DK Metcalf, who was traded. The Pittsburgh Steelers traded for him. So the Patriots added Mac Hollins, by the way. Great bit. Love that. Mm-hmm. The Chargers added Jalen Reagor and Mike Williams. Now, both teams did add offensive line help, but I personally believe not enough. The Chargers added Mekhi Becton at guard. The Patriots added Morgan Moses at right tackle. So both leave free agency with holes that they have to fill in the draft at both receiver and on the offensive line, in my estimation. Let's do this team by let's not do them together. Let's start with the Chargers and then do the Patriots next. The Chargers also added Najee Harris. Fine. 1-year deal, cheap. I have seen so many drafts that have them taking Omarion Hampton. I am going to be so mad if they take a running back.
It's only a 1-year deal for Najee. It's a placeholder.
I am going to be so mad if they don't take a receiver or an interior offensive lineman with that pick, Ben. Mm-hmm. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Assuming that, pardon me, it depends obviously who the receiver is, so that's not a catch-all.
Yeah. I definitely think that's the angle, but I also think that you can get productive receivers in round 2 and in round 3, right? That's one of the spots that I like drafting on day 2 if I can. And so, you get you
can also get really good running backs in round 2 and round 3.
What about guards? They need guard, man.
Yeah,
they need help.
Like a receiver or guard.
Yeah. And so, I don't know. We were talking in the pre-show, and maybe defensive tackle, right? Lost Puna Ford, kind of need a player there. It would be a little Derek Harmon at Oregon. I wouldn't be too upset. It would just make it a wide receiver pretty dire need on day 2. And you don't like to walk into day 2 with dire needs, kind of have to force a pick at a position. I will say, Ladd McConkey was 8th in the league in yards per route run last year. Ladd's season was very, very good. And so I do feel a 120 target Ladd McConkey season is not an unreasonable thing. And accordingly, I don't necessarily need a guy who takes a wide receiver 1 level of targets. I do need a guy who has outside receiver size and can actually catch the ball and some of the downfield stuff. And that's much easier to find in round 1 than it is in round 2. But it's not a great year for those guys. In the top, it's only Tet McMillan. Everybody else is not that sort of a size. Tet McMillan, the Arizona kid. And then in round 2, there are, some dudes that way, but it's not a big receiver class. So it's the chips did not fall for the Chargers in a nice way at all.
There are still some receivers in free agency, none of whom really, I guess you could take Amari Cooper, Tyler Lockett, Stephon Diggs. There's some older vets, and you could bet on a bounce back for Diggs coming back for the injury, of course. Yeah, I mean, Tet McMillan's the dream at 22, which is increasingly he's the one with the falling draft stock as this process goes on. That would be
so nice.
Unbelievable luck for them. I think the Cowboys are the team to watch at 12, is also potentially taking a receiver above them. Matthew Golden out of Texas is the other who, crushed at the combine, who I really like a lot. I'll get into more detail on him. He's less of a fit than McMillan is for this offense, as you described their needs, but I would still take him there at 22 personally.
Yeah.
Both players would also be incredible fits on the Patriots. But the Patriots are in an interesting and kind of fascinating spot in the draft. So right now, the Patriots receiver group is the same as last year plus Matt Collins.
Mm-hmm.
Douglas, Polk, Baker, Booty. And then they added Morgan Moses at right tackle, but otherwise it's basically the same offensive line, which means Vidarian Lowe is currently left tackle, which is unacceptable. You can't
Nightmare
do that.
fuel.
You
Yeah.
absolutely cannot do that. The Patriots tried. They wanted to pay Ronnie Stanley. He stayed with the Ravens. They wanted to pay Chris Godwin. He stayed with the Bucks. Fine, but there's other guys they could, whatever. Anyways, I'm still, they invested very heavily in their defense, which I don't object to per se. There are still some veteran left tackle options and veteran receiver options out there. I named some of them. Cam Robinson, who played for the Vikings, Jags, is available. But Ben, this, I think, raises a really fascinating question for New England, which is they have pick 4 in this draft. Most likely 2 receivers are going in the top 3.
Which 2 quarterbacks,
means,
yeah.
2 quarterbacks, pardon me.
Yeah.
Which means while there is a need for this team, a glaring need at left tackle and receiver, glaring. There's no Ladd McConkey ain't walking through the door. This roster is devoid. Okay. Where they're picking, they will have the option most likely of taking Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. So it's a really interesting situation, right? Which is that like the 2 widely agreed upon blue chip, whatever you want to call it, players are different from the very glaring needs. How would you approach that if you're the Patriots?
Yeah. So the Patriots are the most interesting team in terms of where do you want to play Travis Hunter, right? That's kind of your first question. Vrabel, the Tennessee, they had big bodies at receiver. Corey Davis, AJ Brown, Elliott Wolf, who runs personnel there. Packers tree of thinking about positions, like size at wide receiver. And so nothing about the way that brass operates leads me to believe that Hunter's a wide receiver for them. Were he a receiver, or if they 20 snaps, 25 snaps at wide receiver, like Travis Hunter there is awesome, right? Because you can get him full-time receiver play. You already have 2 great corners, right? In Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis. But you can play Hunter in the slot if you want to. You can rotate him in there if you want to. You have injury protection, so on and so forth. So like that, the Hunter wide receiver wrinkle is a big one. If not that, I think trade back is good. I like getting more picks if you're a team with so many needs, right? So many spots. I'd love to take multiple cracks at the offensive line, right? In terms of adding guys. So I don't mind trade back there if you feel like you're committed to wide receiver. But if they stay and take Abdul Carter at 4, I'm gonna shrug, say good pick, and keep it moving. I really will. Like
they also need him. They need edge,
right? I can't fault saying we think this is a two guys at the top class. We have one of the 2 top guys. We're getting him at 4 instead of 2. We're going to take him and figure it out in the back end. I can't fault a team for doing that because you ain't competing this year, right? So you're it's not like, oh, we hit the receiver pick, we hit the left tackle pick, and now we're winning playoff games. That's not happening yet for New England.
The Patriots are shopping hungry at the grocery store with an infinite wallet.
Yeah, with a big credit card. Yes, they are. It's very good way to take
it. They need everything. They can have everything. There's a term for this, right? The paradox of choice or something. When you have too many, I don't know.
Yeah.
Point is, it's
choice
so
paralysis.
Yeah. Maybe. Right? It's so hard for me to say they should explicitly do this because there really is no wrong answer for them, but you got to do something. And I'm with you. Like, it's so hard for me too. Like, the Travis Hunter thing is so tricky because I've said, I think this dude is an all-pro corner. But he comes in that building, he's so obviously the best receiver on the roster. Yep. So he has to, you just can't now play him at receiver. But it's like, do you want to do that just because it's your need or, and then that's Carter is also obviously such a need for them. And they also, by the way, they have all these offensive needs. So I wouldn't be mad at them if they traded down because those 2 players, I think, are the 2 players who teams are actually willing to trade up for. I wouldn't be mad at them if they traded down to try to pick up some receivers and tackles and that kind of thing.
I love them as a trade down team. I really, really do. I think
dude, do you want to miss out on Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter?
I think like if we sit ourselves down in the Patriots war room right now, we're writing on the whiteboard, like, what are the 2025 objectives? The thing that I would want to put first in a big red circle on the board is like, we can't break Drake Maye. Like, what we saw from Drake last season was delightful, right? Maye checked every single box you want a franchise quarterback. He's making high tier throws, great plays under pressure. He's processing well. He's changing plays of the line, like every single box you want your rookie to check. I thought he was so impressive. The objective in 25 is not to ruin the guy. Like what would take him off of this path? And to me, the thing that would take him off the path is having such prohibitively poor pass protection that he either gets bigly injured or he gets David Card, right? And he starts being really, really shaky and uncertain under pressure. And so to me, my objective would be multiple high tier picks on the offensive line. Like that'd be like my trickle down. This is the thing I really, really, really want to achieve in this draft. And so to me, it's like, all right, Will Campbell probably not going to go 4 overall anymore because his arms are too short, right? Armin Membu out of Missouri is a great player. Probably is going to be like more so pick at 10, 11, 12. If I can move back and get one of the top offensive linemen on my board, recoup a second round pick, or and be able to spend now 2 second round picks on receiver, 2 second round picks on a receiver, and then a guard or a center replacement for David Andrews. Like that's the necessary trickle down. The obstacle in the way of my objective is, look at Travis Hunter run, right? Oh, look at him change direction. That's the temptation. That's the candy on the credit card, right? Going shopping hungry. But to me, like that'd be how I would want to have the vision. Is like, let's not ruin Drake Maye, and accordingly, let's really invest in pass protection.
You don't want to go down too far because there's like 3 or 4 teams picking in the top 12, 13 that are probably interested in those offensive linemen. So you got to play it just right. Yeah, I'm with you. I wish that they had made moves in free agency on offense that gave them less of a sense of urgency in the draft. And
Strongly
I think that's what bums me out about this, because if they had, forget Ronnie Stanley, if he was always coming back to, I do question that. I'm like, well, what kind of offer did you, because he took a real discount. I understand he wanted to stay in Baltimore. I would have walked up with the Brinks truck to that.
Right.
I guess you drive the Brinks truck. Even like a Dan Moore Jr., I know people felt that was an overpay. He was competent in Pittsburgh, whatever. Like, just, I don't know.
Anybody, man. Like, you have to, you're right. You need to have potential bodies. Can I throw a couple trade wide receiver names at you? Because I went and I looked at like
trades. Okay.
Well, because the Patriots called about AJ Brown, right? That's like a rumor that's been going around, which means the Patriots know, listen, like we need to add actual impactful dudes. So no impactful dudes for agency. Let's call and see who's available.
Pickens,
right. So I think Pickens is up there. I would not want to trade for Pickens now. I would want to wait until he gets so pissed off in week 6 he starts causing problems, then the price goes down. And so to me, like I'm waiting on Pickens. I think both Saints guys are interesting. Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave both have 1 year left on their deal. Olave may have the 5th-year option picked up. It's a $15.5 million 5th-year option, pretty cheap relative to the wide receiver market now. But Olave's also got a big history of head injuries. Yeah. Obviously, like the Saints don't have great wide receiver depth, but also the Saints have just changed head coaching teams, and we know they're going through cap hell right now. Do they really think they're going to extend Olave at $30 million per year when he gets there? Like, can I make that call now? Christian Watson is a guy I would call for. Romeo Doubs I would call for with the Packers. I think the Packers were clearly in the Metcalf conversation and willing to talk about moving a receiver. They know we have a lot of wide receiver 2 problems. So can I go get one of those guys, give Watson a chance to have a big healthy season with Drake Maye? Jameson Williams also, like, I don't think the Lions are going to trade him. Lions paid a lot of money to Jared Goff, Penei Sewell, Amon-Ra St. Brown. They're going to have to pay a ton of money to Aiden Hutchinson. J-Mo is going to cost what for them? Like high 20s by the time we get there, right? He's another one who's coming up on his 5th-year option. So there are names that you can call for, right? Tyreek Hill, Michael Pittman. Wait till he gets pissed off by week 6. See if you make a call for him. There's dudes that I think you can try to get in the building to get a trade for the Patriots.
I would like it if they did something. And I think Diggs, Lockett, Cooper, the olds.
Yeah,
I would do that. You gotta get bodies in there as well. You just can't go into this draft. You can't go into the grocery store hungry. That's all. That was my reason. The reason why I brought that analogy is like when you go into the grocery store when you're hungry, you make bad decisions. You go in there and you walk out with a cake. Mm-hmm. You didn't go in there for a cake. You went in there with a grocery list, and I just worry about that approach.
I agree.
All right, let's take a quick break. Come back and ask about a couple of veteran quarterbacks. A few, actually. All right, this one won't take super long. My question for you about the Houston Texans. Will CJ Stroud survive this season?
Yeah, but it ain't gonna feel good. It's not gonna be fun.
The Texans are fascinating because they had a horrible offensive line this year. They knew they had a horrible offensive line. They said, all right, let's accumulate draft picks and move off of some of these linemen, including our best one. In a vacuum, I don't hate the idea of trading Laramie Tunsil. I certainly don't hate the idea of trading Kenyon Green, who was very bad. But this is not a vacuum. This is the current makeup of the Texans offensive line. You've got Blake Fisher, who was right tackle last year, second-round draft pick, who was not good. Laken Tomlinson, who, let me tell you, as a Seahawks fan, was... You don't want to be taking players from the interior of the Seahawks offensive line.
Yep.
Jarrett Patterson, who played center for... that one's maybe... Is he their best? Well, anyways. Drew Scruggs at guard, and then Titus Howard, who switched from right tackle to guard. It was actually decent.
Yep.
And now is back at right tackle, the position that he was worse
He
at.
got moved from, yes.
So they have a lot of draft picks now. Ben, what is the vision here? Like, why would you take the biggest weakness on your team and not make it better, actually make it worse? This is worse. This is a worse offensive line as currently constituted than the one we saw that arguably, definitely cratered the Texans season.
Yeah. I think there was definitely locker room problems and agreement problems and effort problems last year. And I think that's some of the reporting has borne that out. When they moved on from Bobby Slowik, within 2 days, there were a lot of Bobby Slowik stories about things and meetings and organization and discipline. I was like, all right, like it was very clear that, the Texans building writ large had something to say about Bobby Slowik and the way that offense was run. The Texans offensive line problems last year were myriad. They had performance issues. They had bad players on the field who were struggling. They also had a lot of recognition problems and execution problems and picking up twists in games. Yeah. And I think that probably the internal belief is if we move on from Green and Laramie and Bobby Slowik and maybe, again, I'm reading between the lines here, some guys who caused us some problems over the course of last season with some mental errors and some effort errors and some preparation errors. Laramie Tunsil, the most penalized player in football last year, right? 19 flags. I think 17 were accepted or something. Then we can, addition by subtraction, eliminate some of the execution errors, some of the scheming errors, the game planning errors. We can actually pick up stuff that we're supposed to pick up stuff on the chalkboard. You still have a performance problem with the players that you have in the building, but let's say they kept Laramie, like kept Kenyon Green, and they, were able to make up one more pick along the offensive line. They were still going to have performance problems, right? If Kenyon Green was still out there taking snaps, Drew Scruggs out there, Blake Fisher was still going to be out there, Titus Howard, like they invested a lot of money in their offensive line, a lot of picks in their offensive line, and they missed. They missed on a lot of those acquisitions and a lot of those picks. So I think you were always going to run into those problems, and retooling the offensive line to get the culture correct. And then also acknowledging, hey, for the 2025 season, we're going to have to coach and scheme and game plan around the fact that our pass protection is not that bad, not that good. I don't think that's that bad. I'll put it to you this way. I don't think it's going to be that much worse than it was last year. And it was pretty bad last year. I don't think it can get much worse.
Man. As someone who's watched the Seahawks offensive line for 10 years, get appreciably worse, as they have also believed in an addition by subtraction philosophy and not investing in the group. I'm telling you, it can always be worse. I don't. The Kenyon Green one's fine, obviously. The Tunsil thing, I think, is a little bit more debatable. It's a little bit more complicated. Mm-hmm. I think, again, philosophically, I don't object to the idea like this was awful for a litany of reasons. Let's do our best to get as much assets as we can and try to retool this thing and make it work with a new offensive coordinator and better coaching and the right kind of players. I don't love the idea of being so reliant on the draft to do that. Ostensibly, mm-hmm. That's the plan. And also the fact that they brought in Tomlinson really makes me question their evals of
right. And Ed Ingram as well. They traded for with the Vikings.
Oh God,
Ed Ingram, Ed Ingram,
no.
Lord. Like I tried, like when I be critical of players to like not try to say it with a little bit of softness. Ed Ingram is the mark of all marks in terms of opposing defensive coordinators. Like it's a big red circle on Ed Ingram.
The Vikings and the Seahawks interior offensive lines
and those particular players,
and think, give me that. I do not know. I don't.
The Texans whooped Ed Ingram when they played in the regular season. Whooped him. And then went and traded for him. I don't get it.
This actually connects to the Seahawks thing. This whole like, oh, well, we got like a McVay or Shanahan coordinator, and that's going to really help the offensive line. Again, to an extent, certainly. Like what Ryan Grubb. There are, you can absolutely put too much pressure on offensive line, but the idea that this is just like, oh, cool, we got a McVay guy now, and we're just asking them to, run wide zone, and it's going to be so much easier. No, At a
Yeah.
certain point, these dudes are going to be asked to pass protect CJ Stroud. And as currently constituted, it is not going to work.
Who was the old coordinator in Houston? It was the Shanahan guy, right? It was Solak.
Right,
now, I would say the Shanahan tree definitely struggles with the pass protection stuff a little bit more than the McVay tree has historically, but I think that's more just like small sample who's ended up being the dudes. Like I don't think that's a meaningful measure. Yeah, if you have a bad offensive line, it's gonna come to light, and every year more defensive coordinators get better at figuring it out when it comes to the specific system.
Another team that is going to this draft with immense pressure to address the tackle position. We'll see. D'Amico's like, I don't want to help the offensive line. Give me more great defensive players. Let's just
dude. D'Amico
whoop him.
Re-signing Derek Barnett, re-signing Mario Edwards, adding Sheldon Rankins, and then getting Darrell Taylor. Like, I wanted to be like, D'Amico, stop. Enough. We get it, man. Like, listen, it's gonna be sick. You're gonna win games on the back of the 2D brush. It's electric. I get it. It's so cool. But enough, brother.
My quarterback, please. He's drowning. Okay, that actually brings me. Well, actually, there's all these three are connected. Let's go to the Seahawks question.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about this at length. I have not had a chance to talk about it with you. The way I phrased it was, did Seattle bet right? Or is there a possibility that they bet right? So the reason I put it that way is now that we have like the full picture of the Seahawks vision here, I think it's very clear that this is not a rebuild. It's a retool, reset with a specific offensive vision. It is, however, a reset that comes with some limited or some risk mitigation. The Sam Darnold contract details have come in. They are not paying him very much. He does not have a lot of guaranteed money. I'm summarizing here. They can get out of it after a year, which is kind of what I thought when it came in. But that matters for this conversation because, again, while it's not like a rebuild, they're not tanking, they're not ripping everything up. I don't think they're drafting quarterback, or if they are, it's a little bit later, most likely. If they take Jackson Dart in the first round, I will. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. The straw will break the camel's back.
That'll do it for me. But anyways,
it's gonna be tough to explain the Super Bowl tattoo when you've moved on and you've become a Rams fan. Trader Mina, what a shame.
The vision here now seems very clear, which is we want to build our version of a Kubiak off. We literally have a Kubiak in our building. He's our offensive coordinator. As I angrily said after the trade, what did he do to deserve this level of trust? Fine. But anyways, they want to build this offense. They're bringing in a quarterback who they saw operated at a high level last year, admittedly in an incredible quarterbacking environment with a brilliant play caller who does deserve that level of trust. Cooper Kupp and Marquez Valdes-Scantling are in. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are out, which is obviously a downgrade. They did acquire draft picks in the process from the DK and Geno trades. They did not invest in the offensive line at all, but hypothetically we'll use some of those picks to do that. There's also, they still have money, and they talked to Tevin Jenkins. I think that's a possibility, a signing for them, one that I've advocated for. So, Ben, that's the vision in Seattle. It's a bet. What is the likelihood in your mind that this bet works out for them?
Low. That's not a good bet. It is so funny to me.
I've already worked through all my feelings. Nothing you can say can hurt me anymore.
No, it's hilarious that a team that was in the same division as the Niners and the Rams, Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay, dawned in 2017, 8 years ago. In 2025, like, man, we should get this Kubiak cat in here and kind of run this offense. This is pretty. 8 years. They signed Cooper Kupp, DeMarcus Lawrence, and Marquez Valdes-Scantling in 2025. 4 or 5 years late, right? Not that those guys were available, but just these moves are unbelievably. Like we live in a different world than we did 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago when this offense was really dawning. The theory is that we have a quarterback who you can win with in Geno Smith, but you're probably not going to win because of, right? He's not elite. And so we can get some draft capital. We can get some money, right? Sam Darnold is basically a 1 year, $37.5 million deal and then a couple team options. So we can get a draft pick and some money and go add another quarterback who you can win with, right? Sam Darnold, he needs to have a good offensive line, good receiver, same way Geno does. That's the theory. The moment you start putting the names to it, it doesn't pass muster at all, right? Sam Darnold might be the guy that Geno has not only demonstrably been for multiple seasons, but has done so in a remarkably worse environment than Sam did, which you covered extensively and well with Danny and Jackson, so we don't need to rehash it. But it is a very thin bet in terms of the reward on investment, right? Like, okay,
Yeah.
you might be right that Sam is in the same tier as Geno, but we're getting 10, $15 million per year and a third round pick to maybe get the same level of play. Like, it's just, there's so little juice for the squeeze. And any move, when you strip the names from it, any move that's like, we avoided paying a big contract to get draft
Right.
picks and money to spend on other things, that can always look good. Every single time, if you don't put the names on it, yes, not signing big deal to potentially draft a great player in the third round, like is in
Yeah.
theory good. It's the Peter Griffin, it could be a boat meme, right? Where
Yes.
it's like, you
Yes.
either have a boat or you have a mystery box. And then Lois says, Peter, take the boat. And Peter says, but Lois, the mystery box could be anything. It'd even be a boat. Like, all right, congrats. You might get a boat, but there's a really good chance you had a boat in the building. And again, if you're going to make a move like this, there has to be remarkable return on investment. If you hit on the long shot, it has to catapult your team. Sam Darnold is not catapulting your team. So to me, it's just the juice is not worth the squeeze.
Yeah, this is when I criticized the Geno move. Seahawks fans were like, "Well, we weren't winning a Super Bowl with him, and like at a certain point, you got to call it." But this isn't that.
Mm-hmm.
If they were doing all of this in a great quarterback draft, and they were like, "Let's take a swing on a prospect that we truly love, and let's like get a bunch of draft picks." It's not even that many damn draft picks, Like,
Nope.
it's not like I think I am sympathetic to the idea of calling it a team like, hey, we've been on this treadmill for a while. It's not really working. Let's figure it out. If there is a vision that I believe in with tremendous upside, I do not think this vision has that upside. I think if it all works out, you're probably right where you were.
Yeah.
I want to bring up one other angle on this, though. So, okay, one more thing about the Seahawks. The most defensible aspect of all of this is it's basically a one-year experiment financially. Cooper Cup contract details haven't come out. That usually means it's a one, it's not
100%. And it's also Seattle. Seattle signs all their
they don't
deals
do multi-year type things.
Yeah.
Sam Darnold, we talked about that contract. So they're not locked into this, and I think that is the most defensible part about all of this. Maybe they do capture some upside. Maybe he continues building on what he did. I'm skeptical of that because of the environment, which I'm talking about in a second. But it's financially, it all is fine for Seattle, and I think it's not this isn't the kind of thing where I'm like, this is disastrous and it's going to set the team back for years. It's more like, why would you just want to be probably like a little bit worse? So whatever. That's
the thing. Yeah. And the Sam Darnold deal is good. It's a good deal, good business. Right? Exactly. Yeah, 30 something. It's great. It's exactly the deal Darnold should have made. If the Raiders had made that deal, I'd have been like, nice, Raiders, good job. If the Steelers were like, good Steelers, good job. Why did you elect to get into the Sam Darnold sweepstakes? You don't get credit for signing the good deal when you didn't have to be making the deal in the first place.
Okay, so that brings me to the Sam side of this, which is, why did he do this? Because I have to think that deal would have been on the table with like a Pittsburgh, who is currently, we'll get to them at the end, being held hostage by Aaron Rodgers. I also think, especially with the DK trade, it's a better place for him to play. Ben, I'm like, the more I think about it, I just don't love this for Darnold either. Like when we think about quarterback rehabilitation and what it takes, and you wrote an excellent article about this. Yeah. This to me was a confusing move. Maybe the Steelers weren't interested. I don't know. This was, but I would have been if I was Pittsburgh, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Right. Oh, I certainly, once Aaron Rodgers didn't return my 19th call, I'm like, all right, let's get a move on now. I think it is. There's two reasons why Sam's in Seattle. The first is Clint, the second is Kubiak. Like I mean, that's got to be the whole kit and caboodle, right? And this is a very classic thing for the Shanahan guys to do, right? Kyle Shanahan last coached Kirk Cousins in 2015 and will not shut up about Kirk Cousins, right? They when they're positional coaches, when they're passing game coordinators, when they're not the head coach guy, they get some backup white dude who behaves, right? Some Jimmy Garoppolo automaton. I will throw the ball exactly where you tell me to throw it to, when you throw it to, and I have some arm talent so I can hit the 15-yard out. I can hit the throws I need to hit, and they fall for these guys. Every Shanahan coach knows 6 quarterbacks. And then every so often they want, like, remember Shanahan watched Josh Allen beat up on his team, and it blew his mind so much he traded up to the third pick for Trey Lance. He's like, holy smokes, these cats are running around out here. Like they all the Shanahan guys know just the teach tape quarterbacks for. Oh, this is Kyle Shanahan's 2014 install from the Falcons on how Matt Ryan did it. Those are the only quarterbacks they know are those guys. And so Clint coached Sam in 23 with the Niners. He was like, man, Sam's got it for this offense. And then he lands in Seattle, and Seattle's like, so what do you think? He's like, you got to get me Sam Darnold. He doesn't know anybody else. And Sam only works in this offense, only knows Kevin O'Connell, knows Shanahan, so he wants to go run to Clint.
Yeah, listen, the upside case for this is that Kubiak has the juice and was so hampered by the offensive line play in New Orleans. Right. Again, Seahawks offensive line as currently constituted is not that much of an upgrade. Mm-hmm. And that it does help the line in the run game so much that you can create a similar quarterbacking environment. And I'm skeptical of that. But I do think the Seahawks defense is trending in the right direction, so that'll help too. So
yeah, Mike's just gonna every opposing team's gonna score 16 points, and they're gonna go 10-7 again. And then even though the offense is worse, and we're all gonna be going nuts, they're gonna start the season 4-1. We're gonna be losing our minds. It's gonna be great.
All right. Well, a team that did invest heavily in their offensive line was the Chicago Bears. So they completely revamped the interior of the offensive line. Some Bears fans were mad that I didn't put the Bears in my top 5 of my favorite teams in free agency.
Yeah,
sorry.
I said they were the overspenders of free agency. I got yelled at too.
Yeah, you don't get a award for spending the most money. I actually like some of the things that they did a lot. I just questioned some of the other things, so it was kind of a net for me. Like Grady Jarrett, come on, what are we doing here? But I do like, as a vision, the fact that they invested in the offensive line. We can talk about the actual players and the pay and all of that, but you now have Braxton Jones on the left side, Joe Tooney, Drew Dahlman, Jonah Jackson, and Darnell Wright. They could still continue adding in the draft. That is not outside the realm of possibility. Mm-hmm. Right now, your wide receiver group is DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, and this was a sneaky fun addition, Olamide Zaccheaus as a wide receiver 3.
Yep.
And then DeAndre Swift and Roshan Johnson. So my question for you is, can the Bears reboot Caleb? Is this enough? Do you feel good about it?
I definitely think they can, right? Like if you look at the Caleb season compared to the Bryce Young rookie season, Caleb was better in like every single metric besides taking the worst sacks you've ever seen, like 9 seconds into the snap, right? Like if Bryce Young can have the rehabilitation he had mid-season last year such that like the Panthers are just moving forward with him and checking it out, then like it's absolutely in the range of outcomes for Caleb. I don't think that the line is like full solved, right? I think that left tackle is probably still a spot where you'd like to be better, just overall as a team in general. Jonah Jackson, I think it's very easy to go, was very good with the Lions, one bad year with the Rams. Oh, he was injured. We're going to get right back to it. Man, even when Jonah left the Lions, I tell you, the Lions had money and they let Jonah out the building. Like, there was some pass protection problems there before the injuries started. And so to me, like there's still offensive line questions. And then defensively with Dennis Allen, I think this defense can be very, very good. I think it was also very sculpted for Matt Eberflus in the way that he likes to call things. And I think DA is a really good coordinator, is going to be able to marry some stuff, but also, Allen very clearly walked in and said, like, I need, kind of my hog mollies on the defensive line to make this work. We have to see if Grady Jarrett can still be that, if Deo Dangbo can still be that. And so there's outstanding questions. But yeah, Caleb should be much better than he was last year statistically. And he also showed enough last year that you should feel good about him stepping forward with a better OC.
It's interesting, by the way, as we there's this through line between the last 2 teams we talked about, this one and this one, which is, all 3, the Texans, the Seahawks, and the Bears had offensive line problems last year. And the Bears are the only team of the 3 that said, money. Which
I think that's a good sign for Ben Johnson. Like
I do too. That's Ben what I was about to say. Yeah. So the Bears had more money, so we should start there. But the Seahawks had a lot of money, so it's not like the Seahawks could have been in on a lot of this. I mean, all of these teams could have signed offensive linemen or traded for them, which is what the Bears, in fact, they took this problem so seriously. They said, we're not going to wait for free agency. We're going to trade for 2 guards, Cooney. jump the line here, including one
really smart because Will Fries signed for like 5 years, $88 million, right? That's good business.
I really like that. And you sort of hinted at this. I like the fact that Ben Johnson wasn't like, I can scheme around. It doesn't matter. Well, hey, we're going to cover up. He said, nah, I came from a team that was built in the trenches. We are going to do that here. So I question some of the things they did on defense. You alluded to that side of the ball, discussed another day. I love the fact that they invested. Again, I have questions about Dahlman and Jackson, frankly. Like, I don't think they're perfect players, but they're good enough.
Yeah.
They're not Laken Tomlinson, Juice Scruggs. Who's the Seahawks guards now? God.
Oh, is Olu starting guard for them now?
No, he's center.
Tevin Jenkins,
Haynes?
maybe by the time this pod comes out.
That I wouldn't. I mean, although he was with the Bears, he's fine when he's healthy, as a million Bears fans would love to point out every time you bring him up. But anyways, I Bears fans, all of which is to say, I really like the fact that they chose to invest in this particular area of the roster and didn't go to the grocery store hungry. I'll stop using that analogy.
It works though.
And now, obviously, again, they had the money, but they have flexibility in the draft. There's a lot of different directions the Bears could go in.
Mm-hmm.
We can talk about, that when we get closer to the draft, but like I would probably go defense personally, but there's many options are on the table because they were so aggressive about improving there. So I like that overall for Chicago a lot.
Yeah, my biggest outstanding question for that offense is, all right, like if I try to port over exactly what Ben Johnson did with the Lions, just as a framework to understand the offense, there's no clear Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's not how DJ Moore plays, not how Rome Odunze plays. There's no clear Sam Laporta. I don't think there's a clear David Montgomery or Jahmyr Gibbs in a player like DeAndre Swift. A lot of the skill position players are painted with different brushes. And so who they add, I think will be very interesting to understanding, okay,
what
11 personnel or 12 personnel, right, play action, boot, roll, like what are going to be our bread and honey? What are going to be our cornerstones of this offense? Johnson's presser in Indy for the combine was very interesting because he made a big point. He was like, I got a lot of different offensive minds from a lot of different places, guys I haven't worked for. Like, they're very clearly like gonna cook something up. And Ben's pretty good at that. So I'm excited to see it.
If you're Ryan Poles, you're picking 10. God, they've picked 10 like every year for like, I feel like.
Yeah. Falcons ever like 3 straight years with 8 overall. Yeah. They're just like living on certain spots.
Would you take Ashton Genty, Tyler Warren, Armand Membu, or Jalen Walker at
Genty? Membu I really like.
Careful, don't say by a mile because that's just not true.
Yeah. No, I was about to say by a mile.
Yeah, you don't believe
I cut it. Yeah.
He's awesome, but let's.
Membu. I would like. They'd be transitioning him from right to left. So that's a little bit of a question mark. Jalen Walker is tricky because Dennis Allen likes big ends. He is not a big end. So is he playing off ball? How's he playing next to Edwards or whatever? And then Tyler Warren. I like the Michigan kid. I like Colson Loveland a little more than I like Tyler Warren. Warren is
yeah. We gotta talk about that at some point.
Warren is good for like Warren's obviously like hilariously good and highly versatile. He's like to me a traditional Y the way Cole Kmet is a traditional Y, and so I'm pretty much like kind of moving on from the Cole Kmet contract, which I think would be very defensible. Genty is like, all right, Genty is a floor raiser and a ceiling raiser at the same time because our running game is going to work really well. He's going to maximize. DeAndre Swift makes a lot of mistakes by line of scrimmage. Genty's not going to do that. But then also the ceiling, like if he hits, Genty is a give him the ball 22, 24 times a game and just let him score points for you sort of a player. Like the tackle breaking and the explosive play potential is something to say. So yeah, I would love Genty for the Bears.
Raiders might take him before he's there.
That's everybody and their mom has got Genty to the Raiders, which is also super fun.
It is fun. Okay. Last 2 questions. We'll be quick on these about the quarterbacks. So instead of asking for anyone trade for Kirk, I just want to ask, should the Falcons trade Kirk? Because financially, it's not like a slam dunk, obviously, get him off the roster. You're going to have to eat some of his salary to make it work, most likely with another team. You probably will incur, if it's a post-June release, probably incur some amount of cap savings this year. You will probably even if you have to eat some of the salary. I think you're looking at probably 30 next year or something. I looked at the contract a while back, but again, it's all hard to know without knowing how much contract you're actually eating. You're probably not going to get a very high draft pick for him. You're also counting on your rookie quarterback who has his own very serious injury history. Those are the reasons not to do it. The reason to do it is the cap relief to some extent, and you get him out of your locker room.
That's the main thing. It's like the will Kirk get traded / when will Kirk get traded question is how upset is Kirk Cousins willing to be very vocally and very publicly in the Atlanta Falcons locker room? Because Kirk, everybody loves Kirk Cousins, great interview, legend at the bank, whatever. Kirk can be messy. Kirk's had no problem in his career, making sure it's known and getting information to the people that need to have it. Kirk will, Kirk will make this gnarly if Kirk needs to make this gnarly. I think that'll lead to the trade. I think he's traded in like July, right? I think it just gets to the point, he's not going to training camp and things are getting tough in the preseason, and some team has a quarterback 2 injury in August 4th and he gets traded, to the Vikings to be their QB2. I think it's something like that. He probably doesn't want to go back to Minnesota, but at this point, he'd do anything to get out of Atlanta. I think it's going to get nasty before it happens.
I would throw out the Jets, although I was told that Fields didn't want to go somewhere with a quarterback competition. I mean, not that his money is prohibitive of that. The Steelers, still an option, depending on, especially if Rodgers doesn't end up there and they have to bring back Russell Wilson. I think they would probably be open to bringing in Kirk Cousins. I've mentioned the Browns.
Titans.
The Titans, absolutely. Not the Colts. These are places where it's interesting, not like just like blatant backup scenarios. I guess the Raiders, that doesn't really make sense to me.
Oh, yeah. Panthers already have Dalton.
Cowboys would be very funny.
Buccaneers bought Trask back, right? Yeah, they did. But it's also Kyle Trask.
Who is the Cowboys backup quarterback at this point?
No one right now. Because Rap was on Twitter being like, the Cowboys are going to take a quarterback day 2. He's going to compete with Dak. And I was like, oh, baby, here we go.
Oh, here's a funny option for you.
If you say the Eagles, I'll cry.
The Seattle Seahawks.
I was thinking about Seattle a little bit. I honestly was. Him and Sam in the room.
The Kirk is the original Shanahan manic pixie dream quarterback.
Yes.
Okay. Finally, I wrote, when will our long national nightmare be over and Aaron Rodgers lands with the football team? We don't have to answer that. Let me rephrase that for you. Should the Giants and Steelers want Aaron Rodgers, and I guess the Vikings, of those 3 teams, which one should actually want him?
I think the Vikings should not, because if you are committed to making JJ McCarthy work, which it seems like they are, given though they didn't sign Sam and they haven't made any other moves, then I think a very bad influence to get into the room would be Aaron Rodgers, in terms of the media circus that comes with it, in terms of how supportive he's likely to be and how tutelage he's likely to give as quarterback too. I think he's got the Hall of Fame name recognition. So if JJ is struggling, I think some fans will be calling for Rodgers, even if that's not a wise decision. I think the Vikings doesn't make sense. For the Steelers and for the Giants, he's the best quarterback available. He is. Like there were
him and Russ.
Yeah. I think for sure. Like there were games last year for the Jets where it's like, hey, like Rodgers is making the throws. They're dicing up the opposing defense. Right? There were games last year. There absolutely were. And both of them need it. The Giants, the Steelers, it's like, all right, because that's your only hope. The Giants, okay, like if you're getting Shedeur, if you feel really confident in that in 3, do you want to do rookie Deion Sanders kid versus 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers at training camp? Like that to me sounds like
as a panelist on the television program First Take at 10 a.m. Eastern. I am an advocate of that.
Oh man, it would be a zoo. Oh, it'd be a circus.
Why would Rodgers want to go to the Giants? Just not. Look, if you're Aaron Rodgers, who knows what motivates him at this point in his career? But I think we know from a football perspective, he wants to compete. He wants to play for a team where, I don't think this is just a guy who's like, for the love of the game, I want to be out there no matter what. Like, I think if there's not a team that's not actually like a realistically competitive team, I don't really understand what's in it for him. Certainly the money doesn't matter. The Steelers are the only team outside. I mean, Aaron Rodgers to the Giants doesn't make sense for me from a timeline, situation, any of it. The Steelers make sense to me. It does. Right. I get it. I know Steelers fans have really mixed feelings about that. Cam Hayward today was very funny about it.
I didn't see this. What did he say? No.
I think his podcast co-host asked him about it, and he just sounded like tonally a little bit fed up. And he was just like, dude, I'm not paraphrasing here, but he was like, I'm not going to go into the darkness and try to recruit him. If you want to be a Steeler, come be a Steeler.
Right. Yeah.
He was just like, fine, basically. It's being aggregated and misrepresented, I think, to some extent.
You're like the thing you say though is an important one, which is like Rodgers clearly still wants to compete. And to me, like what I want to understand is, does Rodgers want to play in a postseason game, or does he want to go higher on the career leaderboard for passing yards? Those are 2 separate things, right? And like that's the competition that I'm trying to understand. Because if it is postseason, Steelers over Giants every single time. Rodgers right now is 7th on the all-time passing yards, right? 63,000. He's just below Phillip Rivers and Ben Roethlisberger, who are at 63.4 and 64 flat. If he plays another full season, he is going to become 5th all time. He's going to pass those 2 guys. 4th on that list is Favre at 71.8. Rodgers again is at 63. So if Rodgers has 2 4,500 yard seasons, very high bar. He's not going to do that. But in his head, if he has 4.5 thousand yard seasons, he clears Favre and he becomes 4th all time. To me, if I had to guess what Rodgers cares about the most, it would be this list and getting as high on it as possible. Now the Giants become a little bit more viable because I could see the bad running game, going to be trailing in a lot of games. Malik Neighbors is a good wide receiver 1. We're just going to huck it and chuck it and try to accumulate as many counting stats as possible. That's where I start to understand the Giants thing.
That is such bleak analysis of the situation, which is he'll go to the team where he has to accumulate the most passing yards because they're playing from behind.
Yep. I would be stunned if that's not a consideration. That's what it is to be an old head in the league, is to care about your spot in these lists. Only 5 behind Favre in passing touchdowns. He's going to get them this year.
The Steelers to me is the only team that really makes sense. I will say it'll accelerate the George Pickens trade deadline.
Rodgers, Metcalf, Pickens is just perfect, dude. I need it so badly.
We'll see what happens. If I could see, like, Russell Wilson as the veteran quarterback in the locker room with the Shedeur Sanders, that's fine. That makes sense, for the Giants. Wilson Sanders, that makes way more sense to me. We'll see what happens, though. I have no idea when this is going to get done. I guess the last we heard was he wanted the Vikings, and that was what was holding it up. So maybe they hold the keys to all of this.
Why the Vikings have not yet? Like, I don't understand what's going on still in the debate. What is yet to know and understand? And like, if they wanted to like full-throated JJ McCarthy as our guy, because every Vikings fan is like, no, it's all JJ, it's all JJ, it's all JJ. Okay, then let's nip this sucker in the bud. And the bud is not nipped. I don't know why this is still going on.
Another team that invested heavily in their interior offensive line, by the way, which I liked that.
I think, how many games do you think you could win as a starting quarterback of the Vikings? I think you guys would go 6-11. I really like that is the most quarterback-proof offense I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, you can see why Aaron Rodgers would want to go there, certainly.
Absolutely.
All right, that's it for now. Ben, what do you got going on lately?
I'm on SportsCenter later. I'm doing a bunch of draft videos for ESPN. It's up on the YouTube. It's up on the socials. You can check those out. I have my 32 free agent classes ranked coming out next week. So when you listen to this, it'll be out next week. And then I'm out here grinding the film. I'm out here watching the Donovan Jackson reps. I'm Marion Hampton, good player. I'll be on the digital draft show of Mina Kimes fame. I'll be on that next month. See if I get a DK Metcalf pick to react to for the Eagles. It'll be a lot of fun.
All right. Well, I'm certain I'll have you back on at some point to talk actual draft. We kind of teased some of our thoughts on the prospects here, but there's fun players. There's definitely the backs. Whoo, buddy, this running back class. I like it a lot. I will be back next week to talk team needs ahead of the draft, which is now a lot easier. We don't know if the Steelers, the Giants need a quarterback. Hopefully we'll know a little bit more next week. In the meantime, you guys can check this out on YouTube at youtube.com/Mina Kimes, where I picked my 5 favorite free agencies. You want to try to guess them?
Oh man, I really like the Bills. I like the Broncos. I like the Vikings. Am I hitting on any yet?
You hit 2 or 3. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not gonna say which one because I want people to go look for it.
You got to go log in. Rams were good. I thought Raiders was great. Lions.
Okay, now I can't get. If I say anything else, it'll just give it away.
Okay,
so anyway,
go
check it out. We have a lot of opinions shared, obviously. Thank you as always to everyone at Omaha Productions who works on this show: Kirsten Sebecki, Anthony Jimenez, Owen Saylor, Jack Foster, Tucker Tashjian, and I'll see you guys next week.